Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first StarCraft 2 game ever, hosted by yours truly. We're going to be having a ZvT on, I believe, something like Newland or Kirkland City, and without further ado, let's introduce the players. So, spawning in the bottom left, as Zerg, we have the red Bell, and in the bottom right, spawning as the blue Terran, we're going to have FX Shidox. I don't believe that's a clan tag. I think it's just part of the name. But for the sake of this cast, I'm going to call him Shidox. And we have this supply depot going down slightly later than probably needed. Because, well, this is Platinum, so we're going to have a few slip-ups. We've got the Overlord moving out for Bell. And both of these players are going to go for fairly standard openers. And the nice thing about this map is that it is quite a good macro map, even though the area towards the enemy's base is kind of short. It's not as short as most other matches, so rushes don't work quite as well on this map. Though obviously you can still go with these large ramps for a all-in. Getting up here can also be quite difficult if you've got Terran, but generally it's quite an interesting map. You see a lot of big, long macro games, especially with TVT, and less so in a sense with ZvT, because you can have the Mutalisks flying all around here and harassing your entryways. There's even like a little point for them to stand here where they can be slightly out of the range of Marines. So it's quite a good map to have that. And as you can see, we're going to have quite standard openings from both our players. Our Terran is just going straight for a barracks, and obviously we've got the hatch before spawning pool, which is actually quite interesting. We're going to see Bell going for quite a risky macro game and kind of hoping that his opponent isn't going to send out a fast Reaper or anything like that. Luckily, we've just got a Marine coming out, as the Terran player does not quite have gas yet. He is, however, getting his orbital command, so he's already doing better than perhaps the vast majority of silver and bronze players. Going to have this scouting SCV, going to come up into the base of Bell. Going to see if we can scout that hatchery. As you can see, his path takes him up around into the main, and hopefully you should be able to see everything, especially with this hotkey setup here. I think he's actually checking for a third, if we see here. Yeah, he's actually going to check for a third base, in case our Zerg player decides to play a very, very intense macro game. So we're going to see gas early, presumably for metabolic boost. And we're going to have our barracks finishing up, and we're going to be adding on another barracks. No gas? Who needs gas? It's not like we need a tech lab or anything. And he's just going to be building up Marines. No bunker of yet, but I'm sure that's soon to come, as we've got this SCV stocked up there, ready to go. And we've actually got... It's interesting how much this Overlord has seen here. If we go to Bell's vision, he hasn't actually scouted a lot of the base. We can't see... He doesn't quite see gas, or he hasn't actually checked for a second expansion. So he's going to be slightly behind in the regards that he doesn't know much about his opponent, where his opponent has actually scouted the entirety of his base, as you can see here. Though obviously it's too early for tech, so Shidox won't be able to tell if he's going for something like Fast Roach, which he indeed is. Turns out that gas was not, as we would commonly believe, for metabolic boost, but for roaches. Because nothing says, screw you Terran, like Fast Roaches. Oh yeah. He is however hovering a lot of gas. Luckily, he's not going for the common mistake of getting two geysers early as Zerg, mainly because you don't particularly need them that early. You only need one really for metabolic boost, and the same with roaches. You're going to be waiting a little while for them, so don't need them that early. He's going to poke up the front and see that there is indeed a bunker and a wall off going up, so he knows that the second is down. We should see a mule drop. There we go. Okay, so he is actually using his energy effectively. Got a tech lab down now, but come on, Stimpak. I think he's just waiting on the resources. So hopefully that should be coming up soon. We do have metabolic boost on the way for our Zerg player. So we should see that coming out soon, hopefully to grab some Zergs for scouting. He's got one up here, just checking on third base. He's got an Overlord here, because just to be double sure. I'd imagine if in case that Zergling gets taken out. Stimpak's now on the way for our Terran player. He's also got a few more orders out, so this should be fairly okay to hold the line. Unfortunately, that is a lot of roaches. As you can see, they're kind of pouring in. And with pure Marines, this is not... wow, it's going to be hard to actually defend. We do have a factory going to be on the way. However, I feel that's a little too late to actually defend this push. It's actually looking mighty frightening. Got a bunch of lings, a bunch of roaches. And this bunker is not actually garrisoned, though we do have some units here. And they're actually going to scoot on, deciding to actually target down that bunker. It's probably a good idea. We've got mules pulled off the line, but it's just too late to actually get anywhere. And yeah, our Zerg player is just going to pull in the base. Not go exactly going to chase this army down. He's kind of split between targeting the depots and targeting the rest of the army. However, our Terran players managed to actually get out of here alive. He's going to lift up his orbital command, and he's going to get on out of there. Stim pack is on the way, but it's not quite done yet. Neither of his combat shield are done, so he's going to have quite a hard time dealing with these roaches. There is now quite a lot of SCVs pulled off the line, and we've also got these large amount of Marines, and they're going to be focusing down. So hopefully we should see a slight advantage to the Terran now. Apart from the fact that he's pushed out too far, and he's now going to be caught in between Zerglings and a Roach Aspen, I believe, so he really needs to be backing up, and I think in the case he needs to drop these mules onto the mineral patches, especially since this command center still has energy. He needs to play a little more defensively, so now he's going to definitely lose these supply depots. Should be able to hold up this ramp if he's careful and doesn't lower the depot. But luckily he's just raised it. Got this SCV hanging out. Maybe I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say it's to repair these supply depots, but we'll see about that. So, now we see more Marauders coming out, more Marines. I have a feeling at this point he might want to be building Marauders, but as a sense you've seen the amount of Zerglings the enemy has simply kind of forces him to build these Marines en masse if he wants to survive. Either needs to be dropping a mule here or grabbing this SCV. Luckily they do decide to back out since a lot of damage was done with that stim there. So hopefully this supply depot should manage to hold. It's Roach trying to get rid of it, but it's just not going to happen. And back at base, Bell's actually doing a pretty good job. He started to macro up again, knowing that he's kind of beaten his opponent out of his own expansion. We've got this Ling up here. Actually, Burrow coming on the way. Interesting to see if he uses that, if he uses it at all. And we've got a hatchery going down at the third. We've also got a Spire. Now, a Spire would be good, especially if his opponent decides to transition into Marauders to deal with these roaches. Though, luckily for FX Shidox, he's deciding to still train a lot of Marines. Doesn't quite have the minerals to do anything else at the moment. He is dropping the mules now from his two command centers, but he really needs to get back and try and secure this expansion. If anything, he should be trying to scout it at the moment, because he's probably too set on his opponent being there, which is actually at this point not the case. So you now have Banelings coming out for Bell, which is a probably good choice considering his opponent is going fully bio at the moment. Though a factory is on the floor, so we will have the opportunity for mines. And we've got a few medevacs coming out just to support the ground troops. And as you can see, Shidox is going to begin rebuilding his wall. Surprisingly not going for a bunker first, which I think probably would have been the better choice, but going for a supply depot. I think he's had quite a bit of problems with being supply blocked since he lost that first line. Now we've got Mutas on the field, and they're going to be hopefully swinging in here to try and harass the mineral line. This one Muta is just having deciding to have his own party. Apparently these other Mutas aren't invited, they're just not cool enough. So hopefully Shidox should be able to respond to this. He's burrowing Widow Mines. It's probably better to burrow them here. Burrowing them in the mineral line is bad, especially if your Mutas fly over the mineral line. Getting hit by a Widow Mine is going to do the splash damage, and it might kill your own SCVs, so that's always something to think about. Positioning it about here is probably slightly better. Down the middle of the map we have an engagement. It looks like Banelings came in to try and basically destroy this army. Luckily he was able to bring his Marines back, and these Marauders managed to tank the hits, with medevacs obviously healing for support. So he's going to have a few Marines here, probably enough to deal with these mutalisks. Unfortunately, There's no upgrades out on the field for either player, I think. So, although we do have 2 evolution chambers for Bell, which are going to be researching melee attacks and ground carapace. So we might see maybe a late game transition into ultras, but it's probably too early to tell at this point. We're going to have 2 spine crawlers actually going down for Bell. I think he got a little bit worried with that push. Perhaps fearing reinforcements bulking it up would take it out, but luckily these mutas were able to swing in, take out some of the medivacs, a few marines, and luckily there's actually no anti-air on the field for Shidox at the moment, so he's going to be in quite trouble here. Luckily he does have the reinforcing marines going to be chasing those mutalisks away. We do indeed actually have if we go to the units tab, a Viking out on the field. So this is going to be, wow, it's essentially quite useful in taking out the mutalisks, obviously. You can also chase down some of these overlords and gain a bit of map control back if you so choose to. He's going to bring this Viking out here and support it with marines just so it doesn't get taken out. And this down here is actually quite a terrifying force. If he doesn't move back here, oh god, he's going to get hit by all those banelings. Oh god. That was a bad engagement for Shidox, especially since these banelings didn't actually do that much by themselves. And now these mutalisks are going to chase down these medevacs. And that is going to be huge. Shidox has just lost pretty much all his medivac support, a substantial bulk of his army as it stands. And if we look at the units kill tab, even though it's slightly favouring Shidox, I feel like Bell just has some macro support. He's had these bases for longer because he denied that second base, so he's going to have more resources and be able to build more stuff quickly. So in actual fact, the units kill doesn't really work that much in Shidox's favour because he doesn't have the mineral support. As you can see, almost about 2k in the bank for our Zerg player to reinforce his army. And it will be interesting to see what we actually see out of Bell to push this game further. As you can see, we've got Widow Mines coming out, the big Bio Mine play. Unfortunately, he doesn't quite have the production back at home. He needs to be building on more barracks, which he's going to be doing now. And yeah, so we'll probably see a more Bio push out of this Terran player. Still, we've got the infantry upgrade now, but no armor upgrade, which is probably going to be hurting Shidox a bit, especially now since melee and carapace level 2 are out. Got even more mutas coming out. How many mutas are on the field? Let's see, 7 mutas. So not too big of a deal, but enough to harass and defend any drops that could possibly go on for Shidox. He's got these mines chilling out here, just in case they try and push in the main base. And he's got most of his army back at home. He needs to save this reactor if he's not careful. I believe the mutas swung in there, try to pick it off. He needs to cool down a mule now. Oh god, no. Okay, well, thank god he built these barracks. Unfortunately for him, he's actually built these barracks too close to each other, so he can't add on these reactors without lifting them off. And he's also got all these idle SCVs that could be mining from the natural. Especially he seems to have idle SCVs all over the place. So now we see a mine, marine, couple of marauders push from Shidox. I don't think he has the support for this. He needs to get a few medevacs in with that. Luckily we do have these mines here which have been kind of guarding his escape. Gonna see if he can burrow mines here. Oh, but the banelings! Oh god! Didn't think that through. Oh, and the cooling tower goes down. I think that was some splash damage. And we're actually going to see Shidox decide to throw in the towel, and he's actually going to just leave the game. Doesn't quite have the economy for this. He did actually decide to move these out to build reactors, but if he could have built them in a line before, he would have had the barracks ready to go by now. So unfortunately, Shidox just not able to have the infrastructure and the reinforcements able to continue that game. He was looking fairly good at some points in that match, but I feel that especially with his baneling splits, there was a very good one with Marauders that we just caught the end of, but apart from that, he needs to work on how he's going to deal with these banelings. He needs to work on his mine placement. It was good, but he kind of trapped his army between them, which is not a good place to be, especially with the splash damage from the mines. Splash damage with banelings, it's a world of hurt. And Bell doing some very nice muta play, nice macro back at home. He's even building his macro hatch, and he's got his 4th up. So yeah, overall a very nice match. Lots of mistakes on either side. I'm still not sure why this burrow was actually made. It seems to have, hasn't even burrowed this circling up here, so an interesting match overall. We've even got the observer for the mutas just to take out these mines. So good game to both players. I hope you enjoyed.